The Langley mansion on Rodeo Drive, Beverly Hills, was the kind of place that made passersby pause. Its towering iron gates gleamed under the California sun, flanked by manicured hedges that seemed to whisper wealth. The driveway, a flawless ribbon of stone, curled toward a house that looked more like a modern palace, glass walls catching the light, white columns standing like sentinels, and a fleet of polished cars parked like trophies. Tourists snapped photos from the sidewalk, their voices hushed with awe. But those who worked inside knew better. Behind the perfect exterior, the air was thick with dread. The mansion wasn't a home. It was a battlefield. At the heart of that battlefield stood Victoria Langley, a woman as breathtaking as she was brutal. At 33, she moved through the world like a runway model, her fair skin glowing, her auburn hair cascading in perfect waves, her outfits curated like museum pieces. Her Instagram feed, with its 500,000 followers, was a shrine to perfection, every post a testament to her life as the wife of tech mogul Edward Langley. But her beauty was a blade, and her words cut deeper. She didn't just give orders. She wielded them. A single glance from her could silence a room, and her insults lingered like smoke, choking those who dared to breathe too loudly in her presence. In 6 months, 9 maids had walked out of those iron gates. Some left in tears, others in silence. One in such a hurry she forgot her purse on the kitchen counter. The staff whispered about them in the break room, their voices low, as if Victoria's perfume might carry their words to her ears. She broke them. Martha Jones, the chef who'd once catered for Silicon Valley elites, muttered to the gardener, "She always does." The cleaner, a young woman named Clara, avoided eye contact, her hands trembling as she polished the already spotless marble floors. Even Daniel Carter, the gatekeeper who'd seen it all, kept his head down when Victoria passed. The house wasn't the problem. The work wasn't the problem. The problem was her. Victoria Langley, the second wife of Edward Langley, carried herself like royalty, but her throne was built on fear. Edward, nearing 60, was a titan in the tech world, his silver-streaked hair and calm demeanor masking a mind that had built 2 thriving AI companies. His name was mentioned in boardrooms and newsrooms alike, his wealth a quiet force that shaped industries. But his home was another story. His first wife, Elizabeth, had died a decade ago, leaving a void that Victoria filled with her presence, but never with warmth. The staff called her Queen Ice behind her back, a name they'd never dare utter in her presence. Then Emma Thompson arrived. She stepped through the gates on a Monday morning, her dark skin glowing under the relentless California sun, her eyes sharp with a fire that didn't flicker. She carried nothing but a worn nylon bag, her sneakers scuffed but clean, her posture straight despite the weight of the world on her shoulders. Emma, 35, wasn't here to impress. She wasn't here to stay long. She was here for one reason. Her daughter, Lily, a 9-year-old with a heart condition that had already drained Emma's savings and pushed her to the edge of despair. The hospital bills, piling up at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, were a noose. Around her neck, $150,000 for tests and monitoring alone, with surgery costs looming like a storm. In America, where healthcare could bankrupt a family in weeks, Emma had no choice but to endure whatever this house threw at her. The housekeeper, a wiry woman named Susan, met Emma at the door. She didn't offer a handshake or a smile, just pointed to a mop leaning against the wall. "Start with the marble floors," she said, her voice flat. "Mrs. Langley's coming downstairs soon." Susan's eyes lingered on Emma, sizing her up, already betting she wouldn't last. The other staff didn't bother learning her name. Why would they? Names changed every week in this house. Emma tied a faded scarf around her head, picked up the mop, and began. Her hands moved with quiet precision, her lips murmuring a prayer under her breath. Asterisk 3 months. Just 3 months for Lily. Asterisk she'd cleaned houses before, scrubbed floors in homes where the owners treated her like furniture, begged nurses for payment plans in crowded hospital waiting rooms. She'd buried her pride long ago. This mansion, with its chandeliers and gold-trimmed mirrors, was just another hurdle. She could handle it. Then she heard it. Click, clack, click, clack. The sharp staccato of heels on marble, a sound that made the other staff freeze. Emma looked up, and there she was, Victoria Langley, descending the grand staircase like a queen surveying her court. She wore a cream silk dress that clung to her frame, a diamond bracelet catching the light. In her hand, she held a coffee mug, steam curling from its rim like a warning. Her eyes, cold and assessing, scanned Emma, the mop, the bucket of water at her feet. Without a word, she stepped closer, tilted her mug, and let the coffee spill across the freshly cleaned floor. The dark liquid pooled on the marble, mocking Emma's effort. Emma gasped, stepping back, her sneakers squeaking against the wet stone. Victoria's lips curved into a faint, cruel smile. "This is the 3rd time this week someone's left a mess in my hallway," she said, her voice smooth as ice. "I'm not in the mood. Clean it now." Emma's hands tightened around the mop handle, her heart pounding. She wanted to speak, to explain it wasn't her fault, but she knew better. Words wouldn't help here. She bent down, sopping up the coffee, her scarf slipping slightly as she worked. Her socks were soaked, but she kept moving, steady and silent. From the hallway, Susan whispered to Clara, "She won't last. Too soft." But Susan was wrong. Emma wasn't soft. She was steel-wrapped in silence, forged in hospital waiting rooms and sleepless nights. She'd faced worse than spilled coffee doctors who wouldn't look her in the eye, bill collectors who called at midnight, the terror of watching Lily's heart monitor beep too slowly. Victoria's games were nothing compared to that. Emma straightened, wiped her hands, and met Victoria's gaze for a fleeting moment. There was no defiance in her eyes, only resolve. She'd stay. She had to. Upstairs, Edward Langley stood at his office window, watching the scene unfold. His gray suit was impeccably tailored, but his face carried the weight of a man who'd seen too much. His company, Langley Tech, was under fire from new federal regulations on AI development, a storm that threatened his empire. He'd heard the rumors about Victoria's treatment of the staff, but he'd stayed silent, too consumed by boardroom battles to intervene. Yet something about Emma caught his attention. The way she didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't run. He turned away, but her face lingered in his mind. The day wore on, and the mansion's silence grew heavier. Martha, the chef, chopped vegetables in the kitchen, her knife moving with the precision of someone who'd learned to avoid mistakes. Daniel, the gatekeeper, polished the brass on the front gate, his eyes scanning the horizon for Victoria's car. Clara, the cleaner, darted between rooms, her hands shaking as she dusted. They all knew the rules. Stay quiet, stay invisible, survive. But Emma didn't know the rules yet, or maybe she did and chose to ignore them. She worked through the afternoon, mopping, dusting, folding linens, her mind fixed on Lily's smile. On the hospital bed where her daughter waited as the sun dipped below the hills, casting golden light through the mansion's windows, Victoria appeared again. This time, she stood in the foyer, her phone in hand, scrolling through Instagram comments that praised her latest post, a photo of her in the garden, captioned, "Perfection in every detail." She looked up, her eyes locking onto Emma, who was wiping down a glass table. "You missed a spot," Victoria said, pointing to an imaginary smudge. "Do it again." "I don't tolerate mediocrity." Emma nodded, her face calm. "Yes, ma'am." She picked up the cloth and started over, her hands steady, her heart burning. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing. She wouldn't leave. Not until Lily was safe. Not until the bills were paid. Not until she'd won this war, one silent day at a time. The Langley mansion on Rodeo Drive hummed with a deceptive calm the morning after Emma Thompson's arrival. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden patterns on the marble floors, but the air remained heavy, like the pause before a storm. Emma moved through the foyer with her mop, her hands steady despite the ache in her shoulders. She'd barely slept, her mind tethered to Lily, her 9-year-old daughter, lying in a hospital bed at Cedars-Sinai. The latest bill, $12,000 for a single round of tests, had arrived by email at midnight, a cold reminder of why she was here. Emma whispered to herself, 3 months. Just hold on for Lily. Victoria Langley descended the staircase at precisely 8 a.m., her heels clicking like a metronome. Today, she wore a tailored emerald blazer and matching skirt, her auburn hair pulled into a sleek bun, her phone clutched like an extension of her hand. She scrolled through Instagram, her lips tightening at a comment questioning her latest post. Asterisk. All flash, no substance. She snapped the phone shut and turned her gaze to Emma, who was polishing the base of a crystal chandelier. You're doing it wrong, Victoria said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. The streaks are visible from here. Do it again. Properly. Emma nodded, her face a mask of calm. Yes, ma'am. She adjusted her scarf and started over, her movements deliberate, ignoring the burn in her arms. Victoria lingered, her eyes narrowing. And when you're done, clean the guest bathroom. I noticed a speck on the mirror yesterday. I don't tolerate imperfection. She didn't wait for a response, her heels already clicking toward the kitchen, leaving a trail of jasmine perfume and unspoken threats. The other staff watched from the shadows. Martha Jones, the chef, chopped carrots with a rhythm that betrayed her unease, her eyes darting toward Emma. She's testing you, Martha whispered when Victoria was out of earshot. She does this to everyone. Don't take it personal. Daniel Carter, the gatekeeper, polishing the brass doorknobs, gave Emma a sympathetic nod, but said nothing. Clara, the cleaner, scurried past with a feather duster, her shoulders hunched as if expecting a reprimand. They all knew the pattern. Victoria would push until you broke. 9 maids in 6 months. Emma would be number 10. But Emma wasn't like the others. She'd scrubbed floors in houses where owners spat insults worse than Victoria's, worked double shifts at diners to pay for Lily's medications, sat through nights in hospital waiting rooms praying for a miracle. Victoria's words were sharp, but they couldn't pierce the armor Emma had built from years of survival. She finished the chandelier, moved to the guest bathroom, and scrubbed the mirror until it gleamed. Her reflection staring back, a woman who'd learned to bend but never break. Victoria wasn't done. By noon, she summoned Emma to the dining room, where a long mahogany table sat under a glittering chandelier. The silverware, Victoria said, pointing to a set of polished forks and spoons. They're smudged. I'm hosting a dinner for Edward's investors tonight. If they see a single fingerprint, it's on you. Emma nodded. Though she knew the silverware was spotless, she'd polished it an hour ago. She started again, her hand steady, her mind on Lily's smile, the way her daughter's eyes lit up when she read her favorite book. The dinner was a high-stakes affair. Edward Langley's tech company, Langley Tech, was under scrutiny after new federal regulations on AI data privacy, passed in early 2025, threatened to slash profits. Investors were restless, and Victoria's role was to dazzle them with perfection. A flawless meal, a flawless home, a flawless wife. She hovered over the staff like a hawk, snapping at Martha for a slightly overcooked scallop, berating Clara for a wrinkle in the tablecloth. When Emma brought out a tray of wine glasses, Victoria stopped her mid-step. Those glasses, she said, her voice low and venomous. They're cloudy. Are you trying to embarrass me? She plucked a glass from the tray, held it to the light, then let it slip from her fingers. It shattered on the marble, shards scattering like tiny accusations. Emma froze, her heart pounding. The room fell silent, the investors glancing over. Edward's brow furrowing from the head of the table. "Clean it up," Victoria said, her smile cold. "And bring new glasses, now." Emma knelt, gathering the fragments, her fingers trembling not from fear, but from the effort to stay calm. She felt the eyes of the room on her, but she didn't look up. She wouldn't give Victoria dissatisfaction. As she swept the last shard into a dustpan, Martha whispered from the kitchen doorway, "You're stronger than I thought." The next morning, Victoria upped the ante. She stood in the foyer, scrolling through her phone, her face tight with irritation. A rival influencer had posted a photo from a charity gala, captioned, "Real elegance is effortless." The comment section was brutal. Asterisk, unlike some people who try too hard. Victoria's fingers hovered over the screen, her jaw clenched. She looked up to see Emma dusting a bookshelf and snapped, "Why is there a bucket in my hallway? I told you yesterday, I don't want clutter in my sight line." Before Emma could move, Victoria kicked the bucket, sending soapy water splashing across the floor and onto Emma's sneakers. "Fix it," she said, turning away. Emma sopped up the water, her socks squelching, her face unreadable. She didn't argue, didn't sigh, didn't cry. She'd learned long ago that tears were a luxury she couldn't afford. Back at Cedars-Sinai, Lily's condition had worsened. A new test showed her heart valve was failing faster than expected. The surgery, estimated at $300,000, was now urgent, and Emma's savings were a drop in the bucket. She whispered to herself, "Just endure it. For Lily." Later that day, Victoria called Emma to her office, a sleek room with glass walls and a view of the Beverly Hills skyline. On the desk sat a crystal vase, a limited edition piece Victoria had boasted about on Instagram. "This vase," Victoria said, her voice deceptively calm, "has a smudge. I expect you to clean it properly." Emma nodded, reaching for a cloth, but as she lifted the vase, Victoria brushed past, her elbow grazing Emma's arm. The vase wobbled, and Emma caught it just before it hit the floor, her breath hitching. Victoria's eyes gleamed. "Clumsy," she said. "If that had broken, you'd be paying for it. And trust me, you can't afford it." Emma's hands shook as she set the vase down, aligning it perfectly with the others on the desk. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said, her voice low but steady. Victoria smirked. "You will be if you do it again. Now go clean the guest bedrooms. I want the sheets ironed on the beds. No wrinkles." Emma nodded and left, her heart racing but her resolve unshaken. She'd faced worse landlords who'd locked her out, doctors who dismissed her pleas. This was just another test in. The kitchen, Martha caught Emma's eye as she passed. "You're still here," she said, surprise softening her voice. Most would have quit by now. Emma managed a small smile. "I can't afford to quit." Martha hesitated, then lowered her voice. "You know, Victoria wasn't always like this. She used to be one of us, worked as a maid in a big house in San Diego before she met Mr. Langley. Something broke in her back then. She doesn't talk about it, but it's why she's so hard on you." Emma paused, the information settling like a stone in her chest. She didn't pity Victoria not yet, but it explained the edge in her cruelty, the need to control. She nodded and moved to the guest bedrooms, her hands smoothing sheets with care, her mind on Lily's hospital bed, the beeping monitors, the promise she'd made to bring her daughter home. Edward Langley watched from his study, his laptop open, to a news article about Langley Tech's stock dip after the new AI regulations. He'd heard the vase incident, seen the water bucket spill, noticed Emma's quiet endurance. He'd stayed silent too long, letting Victoria's temper rule the house while he fought battles in boardrooms. But Emma was different. She didn't flinch, didn't beg, didn't break. He closed his laptop, his eyes lingering on the doorway where she'd passed. Something about her felt like a mirror, reflecting a truth he wasn't ready to face that night. Emma stood alone in the staff quarters, a cramped room with a single bed and a flickering light. She opened her phone, rereading the hospital's latest email. Asterisk payment due, $12,000. Surgery estimate, $300,000. Her hands trembled, but she closed her eyes, picturing Lily's face, her daughter's voice saying, "Mommy, you'll bring me home, right?" Emma whispered into the dark, "I will, baby. I promise." She didn't know how she'd survive Victoria's tests, but she knew one thing. She wouldn't run. Not now, not ever. Rain fell over Beverly Hills, a rare, soft drizzle that blurred the neon glow of Rodeo Drive and turned the Langley mansion's glass walls into a mosaic of reflections. Inside, the house was quieter than usual, the usual clatter of staff muted, as if the weather had dulled their edges. Emma Thompson moved through the east wing, her mop gliding across the marble floors, her scarf slightly askew from hours of work. Her phone, tucked in her apron pocket, buzzed with a new email from Cedars-Sinai. Asterisk Lily Thompson. Updated surgery estimate, $320,000. Payment plan denied. Asterisk, Emma's heart sank. But she pushed the thought aside, focusing on the rhythmic swish of the mop. "Just keep going," she whispered to herself, picturing Lily's small hand clutching a worn copy of Charlotte's Web in her hospital bed. Victoria. Langley sat alone in the mansion's grand living room, her usual silk attire, replaced by a simple gray sweater and black leggings. Her phone lay on the coffee table, its screen dark, except for a single Instagram notification that had arrived an hour ago, a post from a rival influencer, a tech heiress named Cassandra Wells, standing at a charity gala with a caption, asterisk, "True. Elegance is giving back." The comments were a battlefield. Asterisk, shade at Victoria Langley? Asterisk, some people just fake it for the gram. Victoria's fingers hovered over the screen, her jaw tight. She'd spent years crafting an image of untouchable perfection, but every jab online felt like a crack in her armor. She glanced at the rain-streaked windows, her reflection distorted, unfamiliar. Emma passed the living room, her steps quiet, intending to slip by unnoticed. But something made her pause, a faint sound, like a stifled sob. She turned and saw Victoria, her makeup smudged, mascara trailing down her cheeks like ink. Her auburn hair, usually flawless, was loose, strands clinging to her face. A half-empty glass of red wine sat on the table, next to a framed photo of Edward and his late first wife, Elizabeth. Victoria hadn't noticed Emma yet, her eyes fixed on the photo, her fingers tracing its edge. For the first time, she looked not like Queen Ice, but like a woman unraveling. Emma's instinct was to turn away. This wasn't her business, but her feet stayed rooted. She'd seen pain before, in hospital wards, in her own mirror. She stepped forward, her voice soft. "Ma'am?" Victoria's head snapped up, her eyes red and sharp. "What do you want?" She snapped, wiping her face with a quick, angry motion. Emma hesitated, then placed a folded cloth napkin on the table, a small gesture of care. "I didn't mean to disturb you, ma'am. Just thought you might need this." She turned to leave, her sneakers silent on the marble. "Wait." Victoria's voice was quieter, almost fragile. Emma stopped, turning back. Victoria's gaze flickered between the napkin and Emma's face, as if searching for judgment and finding none. "Why do you stay?" she asked, her tone raw. "I've done everything to make you leave. Spilled coffee, broken glass, insults. Most would have run by now." Emma stood still, her hands clasped. For a moment, she considered lying, but truth felt like the only path. "I used to be scared of life, ma'am," she said, her voice steady. "But when you've held your daughter's hand in a hospital, watching her heart monitor slow down, nothing else can break you. I stay because I have to. For Lily." Victoria's eyes widened, just for a second, before she looked away, her fingers tightening around the photo frame. "Lily," she repeated, almost to herself. The rain tapped harder against the windows, filling the silence. Emma waited, sensing the moment wasn't hers to push. Finally, Victoria spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "They don't think I belong here. Edward's friends, his family, the people at those galas. They call me a trophy wife, a nobody, who got lucky. They don't say it to my face, but I hear it. I see it in their eyes." She laughed, a brittle sound. "I thought if I controlled everything, the house, the staff, my image, maybe I'd feel like I deserved this life." Emma didn't speak. She sat slowly on the edge of an armchair, not too close, just present. Victoria's gaze drifted to the Instagram post still open on her phone. "They think I'm fake," she said. "Maybe they're right." Emma tilted her head, her voice gentle. "People judge what they see, ma'am, but they don't know what you've carried to get here." Victoria's eyes met hers, searching, but she didn't respond. She stood abruptly, brushing past Emma to the staircase, her sweater sleeve grazing the wine glass. It wobbled, but didn't fall. Emma caught her breath, but Victoria didn't turn back. The next morning, the mansion felt different, like the air had exhaled. Emma arrived at dawn, sweeping the front porch as the sun rose over Beverly Hills. Martha Jones, stirring oatmeal in the kitchen, noticed Emma's early start. "You're up before the roosters," she said, a hint of admiration in her voice. Emma smiled faintly. "Just doing my work." Martha leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Be careful, Emma. Victoria's not done with you. She doesn't like being seen like that human." Emma nodded, but her mind lingered on Victoria's tear-streaked face, the crack in her perfect facade. Victoria appeared in the kitchen an hour later, her usual polish restored, a navy dress, diamond earrings, her hair pinned elegantly. But her voice lacked its usual edge when she spoke. "Emma, my office needs dusting. Do it before noon." It wasn't a thank you, but it wasn't an insult either. Emma nodded. "Yes, ma'am," and headed upstairs, her heart lighter than it had been in days. She dusted Victoria's office with care, aligning the pens on the desk, wiping the glass walls until they sparkled. When she finished, she found a small note on the desk, written in Victoria's elegant scrawl. Asterisk. Coffee machine's clean. Good work. It was the closest thing to praise she'd ever received. Edward Langley noticed the shift. He sat in his study, his laptop open to a news article about Langley Tech's latest challenge, a class action lawsuit from users claiming privacy violations under the new 2025 AI regulations. The stress was etched into his face, his silver hair, more disheveled than usual. He'd overheard the living room exchange the night before, caught the tremor in Victoria's voice. He'd stayed silent too long, letting her temper rule the house while he fought to save his company. But Emma's presence was changing something, like a stone dropped in still water. He called her to his study that afternoon, his voice low. "Emma, right?" She nodded, standing straight. "Are they treating you well here?" Emma paused, her eyes steady. "They treat me like life treats most of us, sir. But I'll be okay." Edward blinked, surprised by her candor. "You're different," he said, almost to himself. "Most don't last a week with Victoria." Emma's lips curved slightly. "I don't have the luxury of leaving, sir. My daughter needs me to stay." Edward nodded, his gaze drifting to a photo of his late wife on the desk. He didn't say more, but his silence carried weight, a flicker of respect for the woman who refused to break. That evening, Emma overheard a phone call as she cleaned the hallway. Victoria was in her office, her voice low but tense. "Yes, I know the gala is tomorrow, Cassandra. I'll be there." "Perfect, as always." She hung up, and Emma caught a glimpse of her through the glass door. Her hands trembling, she typed a response to another Instagram comment. Asterisk. All show, no soul. Victoria's obsession with her image was a cage. Emma realized one she'd built herself. But the crack Emma had seen last night was real, and it was growing. As Emma returned to her cramped staff quarters, she checked her phone again. A new message from the hospital. Asterisk. Lily's condition stable, but surgery must be scheduled within 2 months. Asterisk. The words felt like a clock ticking in her chest. She closed her eyes, picturing Lily's smile, and whispered, "I'm still here, baby. I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the mansion glowing under a crescent moon. Something was shifting, not just in Emma, but in the house itself. Victoria's ice was beginning to melt, and Emma's quiet fire was the spark. The Langley mansion on Rodeo Drive woke to a rare stillness, the kind that follows a storm. The morning sun filtered through the glass walls, casting soft prisms across the marble floors, and the air felt lighter, as if the house itself had taken a breath. Emma Thompson tied her scarf and began her day, sweeping the front porch where dew clung to the stone. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket, a text from Sinai. Asterisk. Lily's surgery scheduled for next month. Deposit required. $50,000. Asterisk. The number was a weight, but Emma's hand stayed steady. She'd faced worse odds. She whispered to herself, "We're almost there, baby," and kept sweeping. A rhythm unbroken. Victoria Langley appeared in the foyer at 9 a.m., her presence less like a thunderstorm and more like a breeze. She wore a simple line dress, her auburn hair loose, her makeup minimal, a departure from her usual polished armor. She paused by the staircase, watching Emma dust the banister, and for a moment her eyes softened. "Emma," she said, her voice lacking its usual edge. "The library shelves need organizing. Can you handle it before lunch?" Emma nodded, her face calm. "Yes, ma'am." Victoria hesitated, then added, "And the coffee you made yesterday was good." It wasn't much, but in this house, it was a crack in the ice. Emma moved to the library, a grand room lined with oak shelves and leather-bound books Edward Langley had collected over decades. As she alphabetized the titles, her mind wandered to the night before. Victoria's tear-streaked face, her confession about feeling like an outsider in her own world. Emma didn't pity her, but she understood. She'd felt invisible too, in hospital waiting rooms and houses where her work went unnoticed. She aligned a copy of Pride and Prejudice with care, her fingers brushing the spine, and thought of Lily, who loved stories about strong women. She'd make it through this for her. In the kitchen, Martha Jones noticed the change. She stirred a pot of soup, her eyes flicking toward Emma as she passed with a stack of dustcloths. "You're still here," Martha said, her voice warm with surprise. "And Mrs. Langley didn't snap at me this morning." "What did you do to her?" Emma smiled faintly. "Nothing, Martha. Just my work." Martha shook her head, chopping parsley with a grin. "You're doing more than work, Emma. You're changing the air in this house." Daniel Carter, the gatekeeper, overheard from the doorway and nodded. "She's right. Even Clara's not jumping at shadows anymore." The staff were warming to Emma. Clara, the cleaner, offered her a bottle of water during a break, her shy smile a quiet alliance. Daniel started calling her Miss Emma, a small gesture of respect that spread like ripples. The mansion, once a place of whispered fears, began to hum with cautious hope. But Victoria wasn't ready to let go of her control entirely. She still hovered, checking Emma's work, her eyes scanning for flaws. Yet her criticisms grew softer, her tone less, like a blade and more like a question. "The windows in the dining room," she said one afternoon. "They're clean, but could you polish them again? I'm particular." Emma nodded, sensing the shift, and polished until the glass gleamed like crystal. One evening, as Emma wiped down the kitchen counters, she overheard Victoria on the phone in the adjacent study. The glass walls carried her voice, low and strained. "Yes, Cassandra, I'll be at the women's luncheon. I'm not hiding." She hung up, and Emma caught a glimpse of her scrolling through Instagram, her face tightening at a post from Cassandra Wells. Asterisk, "Real strength is lifting others up." The comments were merciless. Asterisk, "Unlike certain people who tear everyone down." Victoria's hand shook, and she set the phone down, her breath uneven. Emma paused, her cloth still, and their eyes met through the glass. Victoria looked away, but not before Emma saw the flicker of shame. Later that night, Victoria found Emma in the hallway, folding linens. "You're good at this," she said, her voice almost conversational. "The house looks better." Emma folded a towel with care, her voice soft. "Thank you, ma'am. I just try to do my best." Victoria lingered, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. "You said something the other night," she said, "about your daughter, about not being scared anymore. How do you do it?" "Keep going, Emmy." Emma paused, her hand still. "I think about Lily, ma'am. Every time I want to give up, I see her face. That's enough." Victoria nodded, her eyes distant. "I wasn't always like this," she said, almost to herself. "I grew up in a small apartment in San Diego, cleaning houses to pay for school. When I met Edward, I thought I'd escaped that life. But his friends, his family, they never let me forget where I came from." She laughed, a hollow sound. "I thought being perfect would make them respect me. But it just made me hard." Emma listened, her presence steady, not judging, just there. Victoria's shoulders relaxed, and she added, "You don't seem to care what people think. I envy that." Emma shook her head. "I care, ma'am. I just don't have time to let it stop me." The moment passed, but it left a mark. The next day, Victoria's demeanor shifted further. She didn't bark orders at Martha or glare at Clara. When Daniel opened the gate for her, she nodded a small gesture, but one that made him stand straighter. Emma noticed it all, her heart cautious but hopeful. She kept working, scrubbing floors, folding sheets, her mind on the hospital bill ticking like a clock. But the house felt different, like a place that might hold more than fear. A week later, Emma was cleaning the guest bathroom when her phone rang. She wiped her hands and answered, her voice low. "Yes, this is Emma Thompson." The voice on the other end was a hospital administrator, her tone clipped. "Ms. Thompson, we need a $50,000 deposit by next week to secure Lily's surgery slot. Can you arrange it?" Emma's breath caught, her fingers gripping the sink. "I'm working on it," she said, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. "I'll find a way." She hung up, her eyes burning, and resumed scrubbing. The rust stain under her cloth, a stubborn reminder of her reality. Unbeknownst to Emma, Victoria had overheard the call from the hallway. She stood frozen, her phone in hand, a draft Instagram. Post unsent. Asterisk. Perfection is in the details. She thought of Emma's words, her quiet strength, the daughter she was fighting for. Victoria slipped into her office, closed the door, and dialed a number she hadn't called in years, a friend from modeling days who now ran a children's health foundation. "Sarah," she said, her voice low, "I need a favor. There's a little girl, Lily Thompson. She needs surgery. Can you help?" She didn't mention Emma, didn't explain. But when she hung up, her hands were steady for the first time in days. Edward Langley noticed the change too. He sat in his study, his laptop open to a Langley Tech earnings report, showing a 15% stock drop after the 2025 IOI privacy lawsuit. The pressure was mounting, but so was his awareness of the house. He'd seen Victoria's softer tone, heard her thank Clara for a clean table, watched Emma work without complaint. One evening, he found Emma in the garden, watering the roses. "You're still here," he said, his voice low. "Most don't last." Emma looked up, her hands damp. "I can't afford to leave, sir. My daughter's counting on me." Edward's eyes softened, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. "Victoria's not easy," he said. "I've let her run things too long." "I'm sorry." Emma shook her head. "It's okay, sir. Life's not easy for any of us." Edward lingered, his gaze on the roses. "Elizabeth, my first wife, loved these flowers," he said. "She was kind like you, I think. I think Victoria's trying to live up to her in her own way." Emma nodded, sensing the weight of his words. She didn't need his pity, but his acknowledgement felt like a small victory. As she returned to the house, she passed Victoria in the foyer, who offered a faint smile, a rare, genuine one. "Good night, Emma," she said. Emma paused, surprised. "Good night, ma'am." The mansion was changing, slowly, like a tide turning. The staff laughed more, their voices less hushed. Martha shared a plate of cookies with Emma, calling her sister for the first time. Clara hummed while dusting, and Daniel told stories of his kids during breaks. Emma felt it, a shift in the air, but she kept her focus on Lily, on the $50,000 she didn't have, on the surgery that was her daughter's lifeline. She didn't know Victoria had made a call that might change everything. But as she lay in her cramped staff quarters, staring at a photo of Lily on her phone, she felt a spark of hope, a spark that, for the first time, didn't feel like it would burn out. The Langley mansion glowed under the late September sun, its glass walls reflecting the golden hues of Beverly Hills. Inside, the air felt alive, as if the house had begun to breathe freely for the first time in years. Emma Thompson stood in the kitchen, peeling potatoes for Martha Jones, her hands steady despite the weight of the past weeks. Her phone, tucked in her apron, held the latest message from Cedars-Sinai. Asterisk Lily Thompson. Surgery scheduled, October 15th. Deposit still outstanding. Asterisk. The $50,000 loomed like a mountain, but Emma's heart clung to a fragile hope, fueled by the subtle changes in the mansion, the softer tone in Victoria Langley's voice, the warmth in Martha's smiles, the way Daniel Carter now greeted her with a proud "Miss Emma." Victoria appeared in the doorway, her usual elegance tempered by a quiet sincerity. She wore a soft blue blouse and tailored slacks, her auburn hair loose, her face free of the heavy makeup she once wore like armor. "Emma," she said, her voice calm, "I'm attending a women's luncheon today at the Beverly Wilshire. I'd like you to come with me." Emma paused, her knife hovering over the potato. "Ma'am, I'm not sure I belong at something like that." Victoria's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile. "You belong more than you think. I've arranged a dress. It's in your room. Be ready by noon." Emma's eyes widened, but she nodded, her mind racing. She finished peeling the potatoes, her hands trembling with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. In her cramped staff quarters, she found a neatly folded dress on her bed, a simple, elegant sage green gown with a matching scarf, understated but beautiful. She touched the fabric, her fingers tracing the soft cotton, and felt a lump in her throat. It wasn't just the dress. It was the gesture. A crack in the wall Victoria had built around herself dotted the Beverly Wilshire. The luncheon buzzed with women in designer dresses, their laughter mingling with the clink of champagne glasses. Victoria walked in with Emma at her side, not as a maid but as a guest, her posture equal, her presence acknowledged. Eyes turned, whispers followed Victoria Langley, the Instagram queen, with a woman no one recognized. At a table of influential women, Victoria introduced Emma with a steady voice. "This is Emma Thompson," she said. She's stronger than most people I know, and her daughter, Lily, is a fighter. A woman in a tailored blazer, Dr. Laura Bennett from the Children's Cardiac Foundation, leaned forward. "Tell me about Lily," she said, her eyes kind. Emma's voice wavered as she spoke of Lily's heart condition, the hospital bills, the $320,000 surgery looming like a guillotine. Dr. Bennett listened, her face softening. "Send me her medical records," she said. "Our foundation sponsors surgeries for children like Lily. We might be able to cover it fully." Emma's breath caught, her hands gripping the table. "You mean everything?" Dr. Bennett nodded. "Everything. Surgery, meds, follow-up care." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, and she blinked them back, whispering, "Thank you." Victoria watched, her expression unreadable but her eyes soft, and for a moment, the room's chatter faded. Back at the mansion, Emma stood alone in the garden, the sage-green dress still draped over her shoulders, the scarf in her hands. She called the hospital, her voice trembling as she confirmed Dr. Bennett's offer. The administrator's tone shifted from cold to warm. "We'll coordinate with the foundation. Lily's surgery is secured." Emma sank to her knees, the grass cool against her skin, and whispered, "Thank you, God. Thank you." She didn't know Victoria had orchestrated the connection, but she felt the weight of the moment, the impossible becoming real. That evening, Victoria found Emma in the kitchen, washing dishes beside Martha. "Did they call?" she asked, her voice low. Emma turned, her eyes still red from tears. "Yes, ma'am. This afternoon. They're covering everything. Lily's going to be okay." Her voice broke, and she wiped her face with her apron. Victoria looked away, her fingers twisting the hem of her blouse. "I'm glad," she said, almost shyly. Emma stepped closer, her voice soft. "I have to thank you, ma'am. I don't know how you did it, but I know you helped." Victoria shook her head, her eyes glistening. "Don't thank me, Emma. I needed to do it." Later, in the quiet of her office, Victoria sat at her desk, her phone open to Instagram. She hadn't posted in days, the pressure of Cassandra Wells' comments fading in the face of something realer. She thought of her own past cleaning houses in San Diego, dodging insults from employers, clawing her way to a life she thought would erase the shame. She'd built a fortress of perfection, but Emma had slipped through its cracks, reminding her of the girl she'd buried. Victoria closed her laptop, picked up the framed photo of Edward and Elizabeth, and whispered, "I'm trying to be better." The next day, Lily's surgery was confirmed for October 15th, with the Children's Cardiac Foundation covering all costs. Emma spent the weekend at Cedars-Sinai, holding Lily's hand, reading her stories, brushing her dark curls. Lily, pale but smiling, clutched a stuffed bunny and whispered, "Mommy, am I going home soon?" Emma kissed her forehead. "Soon, baby. Very soon." She didn't sleep, her eyes fixed on the heart monitor, its steady beeps a fragile promise. When Emma returned to the mansion, the staff greeted her like family. Martha had cooked a small feast: roast chicken, cornbread, and apple pie laid out in the staff break room. "For Lily," she said, her eyes bright. Clara hung a handmade card on the fridge, signed by all the staff, with "Get Well, Lily" in bright colors. Daniel clasped Emma's shoulder, his voice gruff. "You did good, Miss Emma." Emma smiled, her heart full, but her mind was on the surgery, the final hurdle. Victoria's transformation rippled through the house. She stopped snapping at Clara, thanked Martha for her cooking, even asked Daniel about his family. One morning, she found Lily's card on the fridge and paused, her fingers tracing the childish handwriting. She sought Emma out in the laundry room, where she was folding sheets. "Emma," she said, her voice soft, "I was a maid once in San Diego. I was 13, scrubbing floors for people who didn't see me. I swore I'd never be that girl again, so I became this." She gestured to herself, a flicker of shame. In her eyes, I was wrong to treat you the way I did. I'm sorry. Emma set down a sheet, her eyes meeting Victoria's. Pain makes us do things, ma'am, she said gently. But it doesn't have to make us cruel. Victoria nodded, her throat tight. You reminded me of that, she said. You and Lily. She paused, then added, when she's better, bring her here. I'd like to meet her. Emma's smile was small but warm. I will, ma'am. The day of Lily's surgery arrived, and Emma sat in the hospital waiting room, her hands clasped, praying through the hours. When the doctor emerged, his face calm, and said, she's stable. The surgery was a success. Emma wept, her tears a release of months of fear. She stayed by Lily's side for 2 days, sleeping in a chair, whispering stories of hope. When she returned to the mansion, the staff gathered in the foyer, their faces bright with relief. Martha hugged her, Clara clapped, and Daniel grinned. Victoria stood at the top of the stairs, her blue blouse catching the light. Welcome back, Emma, she said, her voice steady. I'm glad she's okay. Emma looked up, her eyes full. Thank you, ma'am, for everything. Victoria descended the stairs, her hand brushing Emma's arm, a touch, not a command. The mansion, once a battlefield, felt like something new. Not a home yet, but close. The Langley mansion on Rodeo Drive stood radiant under the October sky, its glass walls catching the golden light like a beacon. The iron gates, once a barrier of fear, now swung open with a quiet welcome. Inside, laughter echoed through the marble halls, a sound that had been foreign just weeks ago. Emma Thompson stood in the front yard, arranging a small table under the shade of a jacaranda tree, its purple blossoms swaying in the breeze. Lily, her 9-year-old daughter, was coming home today, her heart surgery a success, her smile brighter than ever. Emma's hands trembled as she set out a tray of lemonade and cookies, a celebration planned by the staff. Her sage green dress, the one Victoria had gifted her, hung neatly in her new quarters, a clean, airy room with a soft bed and a window overlooking the garden. Victoria Langley stepped out of the mansion, her usual silk replaced by a soft coral dress, her auburn hair tied loosely, her face free of the mask she once wore. She carried a small gift wrapped in blue paper, her steps light but purposeful. Emma, she called, her voice warm. Everything ready? Emma turned, her smile genuine. Yes, ma'am. Just waiting for Lily. Victoria nodded, her eyes softening. Good. I brought something for her. She held up the gift, a shy gesture that felt like a bridge between them. The staff gathered in the yard, their faces bright with anticipation. Martha Jones, the chef, had baked a batch of her famous blueberry muffins, her apron dusted with flour as she beamed like a proud aunt. Clara, the cleaner, arranged plastic chairs in a circle, humming a tune she hadn't dared sing before. Daniel Carter, the gatekeeper, hung a string of paper lanterns from the tree, his grin wide as he called out, Miss Emma, this is gonna be a party. Even Susan, the housekeeper, usually stern, helped set the table, her eyes crinkling with a rare smile. The mansion, once a battlefield, was now a home, its walls holding warmth instead of fear. Lily arrived in a taxi, her yellow dress bright against her dark curls, a small scar near her collarbone the only sign of her ordeal. Emma rushed to the gate, her heart soaring, and pulled her daughter into her arms. My baby, she whispered, breathing in the scent of soap and hope. Lily giggled, clutching a stuffed bunny. Mommy, it's so big here. The staff cheered, and Martha swept Lily into a hug, slipping a muffin into her hand. Victoria approached, kneeling beside Lily, her coral dress brushing the grass. Hi, Lily, she said, offering the gift. I'm Victoria. This is for you. Lily opened it shyly, a storybook, the secret garden, its cover bright with flowers. "Mommy says." "I love books," Lily said, her smile wide. Victoria's eyes glistened. "Call me Auntie Victoria, okay?" Edward Langley stepped forward, his gray suit impeccable, but his face softer than Emma had ever seen. "Lily, you're welcome here any time," he said, his voice steady. "This is your second home now." He turned to Emma, his hand extended. "You've done more than clean this house, Emma. You've brought peace." Emma shook his hand, her eyes full. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. Later that evening, as the sun painted the sky in hues of gold, Emma and Victoria sat under the jacaranda tree, sipping lemonade while Lily read her new book nearby, The Staffs. Laughter drifted from the kitchen, where Martha was teaching Clara to make cornbread. Victoria spoke, her voice low. "The day I made you clean that spilled coffee, I wanted you to leave. I couldn't stand anyone seeing the real me, the girl who scrubbed floors in San Diego, who felt like she'd never be enough." Emma listened, her hands folded. "You showed me what strength really is, Emma. Not control, but staying, no matter what." Emma smiled softly. "And you gave Lily a chance to live, ma'am. That's strength, too." The mansion had changed. Lily visited often, her laughter filling the halls as she followed Emma or sat with Victoria, learning to fold napkins or water the roses. The staff no longer walked on eggshells. Daniel sang while polishing the gates, Clara danced while dusting, and Martha shared recipes with everyone. Victoria joined a local children's health foundation, her Instagram posts now focused on advocacy rather than perfection. The house on Rodeo Drive, once known for its cold silence, now echoed with joy, family, light. Emma's story is a testament to the power of resilience and kindness. She didn't fight with words or anger. She stayed, her quiet strength a mirror that reflected truth for those around her. Victoria, trapped by her past and the pressure of a perfect image, found redemption through vulnerability and generosity. Their journey reminds us that pain can shape us, but it doesn't have to define. In a world of 2025 America, where healthcare costs can crush families and social media can amplify insecurities, Emma and Victoria show that healing begins with seeing each other, not as roles or rivals, but as human beings. The lesson is simple, yet profound. Sometimes the strongest people don't shout or fight. They stay, and staying, they change everything. If Emma and Victoria's story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you watching from? Subscribe to Legacy Stories for more tales of courage, redemption, and the human spirit. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and keep shining.